More and more scientific research keeps adding up, confirming the validity of therapeutic marijuana. Other studies comparing toxicity and the risk of addiction among the most popular drugs have placed marijuana last, preceded by nicotine, heroin, cocaine, alcohol, and even caffeine. More and more doctors are taking an open stand in favor of medical marijuana.
Marijuana is much less dangerous than many other substances in less restrictive schedules like morphine and cocaine, not to mention the unscheduled legal mass killers, tobacco and alcohol. Of course, marijuana does have proven medical usefulness for some conditions.
As an interested physician pharmacologist, I became very much taken by the fact that cannabis was analgesic, relieved pain. It lowered the likelihood of nausea and vomiting in cancer chemotherapy. It relieved muscle cramps in people with multiple sclerosis. It increased appetite. It helped AIDS patients both in gaining weight and in treating their nausea.
Dr. Lester Greenspoon, professor emeritus at Harvard Medical School, conducted in 1967 an in-depth research on all existing scientific material on marijuana. He eventually concluded that marijuana is by no means the dangerous and devastating drug described by the propaganda.
I learned that despite my training in medicine and science, I had been brainwashed like just about every other citizen in this country.
Dr. Greenspoon has written several books on marijuana and is considered today one of the leading experts on the subject.
This absurd continuation of this prohibition is largely a function of ignorance. It turns out that marijuana came across as a remarkably non-toxic drug. People find smoking marijuana very useful for a whole host of symptoms.
But all this is systematically ignored at federal level, where the legalization of marijuana keeps being rejected without a scientific or sound basis.
Is there a better way, and some people have suggested looking into a system of legalization that might be effective in stemming the tide of drugs from Mexico and then the border wars and the immigration problems from Mexico? Have you considered this as a possibility?
I think anybody who looks at this problem considers it, and ultimately when you look at it, rejects it.
Let me ask you about the way
people, I'm sorry, but there are too many individuals, both parents and others, who have lost their lives to drugs to give a ready answer that it should be legalized.
Name me a couple of parents who've lost their lives to marijuana.
Can't.
Exactly, you can't, because that hadn't happened, and there hadn't been a wave, because that's been a constant thing in America since Harry Anslinger, because African Americans used it and saw it as something that was crippling and gave it to the Latin Americans and put an ethnic tone to it. When have we, is there some time we're going to see that we ought to prioritize meth, crack, cocaine, and heroin and deal with the drugs that the American culture is really being affected by and lives are being lost?
They don't care if marijuana is the only drug that can alleviate your pain and suffering so that you can live longer, so that you can take your chemotherapy, so that you have a reasonable quality of life. They would rather fight the war on drugs even though they know that there are sick and dying patients being denied relief because of their position. Unconscionable.
So absurd and untenable has become the government's position on marijuana that more and more people are beginning to suspect that the prohibition is not based on the presumed dangers of its chemical compounds, but on the tremendous potential that hemp has always shown in history for industrial production. Known since ancient times as the miracle plant, the sister of man, a gift from the gods, the history of cannabis is deeply linked to human history. Since the dawn of civilization, the cannabis plant has been an invaluable source for the production of textiles, paper, food, and fuel materials, in addition to providing a wide range of important medicinal remedies.
You can make paper out of it, that you can make cloth out of it, you can make cord out of it, you can make oil, you can make medicine.
You can make food out of hemp seed oil. You can burn it in a lamp. You can make rope. You can make parachute cordage and tie your shoes. And the Constitution was really printed on hemp paper.
You can make plastic from hemp, paper from hemp, wood from hemp, oil from hemp, fuel from hemp, name it.
The cannabis plant is very resistant, can grow at almost any latitude, requires no herbicides or pesticides to be cultivated, and grows faster than almost all other crops. Cannabis can produce up to 25 tons of biomass a year per cultivated acre, an extraordinary feat. The two most common species of cannabis are sativa and indica. The first one, taller and slender, has a thinner foliage and can reach up to 24 feet in height. Indica is much stockier and thicker in foliage. Also, the sativa leaves are thinner and more elongated, while those of the indica are shorter and more well-rounded. A third type of cannabis, less common, is the ruderalis, which grows mainly in the colder regions of Central Asia. The chemical compound causing the mental alterations in the smoker, called THC, is found only in the leaf and flower of cannabis. The rest of the plant can be used to derive hundreds of useful products without having to discard a single gram. The stalk of cannabis is composed of an inner, more woody and rigid part, and an outer wrapping, which is softer and fibrous in nature. From the central stem, the pulp for paper production is harvested. The oldest cannabis paper dates back to the Chinese Empire of 4000 BC. In Europe, the use of cannabis paper began in the 8th century under the Emperor Charlemagne, who strongly encouraged its cultivation. Used by monks to copy the Holy Scriptures, cannabis paper also provided the parchments for the first Bible printed by Gutenberg. The outer wrapping of the stem produces the fiber needed to make ropes and fabrics, which are universally recognized for their quality and durability. Literally millions of miles of rope of all types and sizes have been produced with cannabis fiber in the course of history.
For centuries prior to about 1850, all the ships that sailed the western seas were rigged with hempen rope and sails. A 44-gun frigate took over 60 tons of hemp for rigging, including an anchor cable 25 inches in circumference.
The range of fabrics that can be produced with the fiber of cannabis is virtually unlimited.
The beauty of the hemp fibre is that it could be many things depending on its method of cultivation and the method of processing. These can range from coarse hessians, industrial fabrics such as carpet backings, to the finest linens. With special steam treatment, the fibre can fibrillate and produce a cloth of a silky consistency, which is indistinguishable from natural silk.
Fabrics from cannabis are generally softer and stronger than cotton. They cost less, and their manufacturing, unlike cotton, produces virtually no pollution.
Hemp is undoubtedly the most durable of the natural fibres. The original Levi jeans were made from recycled sailcloth, which was made from hemp fibre, and it proved its worth under the most trying of conditions. The testing we've done over 3 years, 3 years of very hard wash and wear, don't make the slightest impression on the hemp fibre. It softens, but it doesn't weaken.
The seeds of cannabis can be used as a food base, ground into a high-protein flour, or used to produce an excellent edible oil, rich in protein, carbohydrates, and essential fatty acids, such as omega-3 and omega-6.
Hemp seed oil is unique in having such a high proportion of the omega-3 unsaturated fatty acids, with a very strong cardioprotective effect. It has a near complete balance of essential amino acids, second only to soybean.
The oil of cannabis may also provide a superior fuel for illumination and domestic heating, or it can be used as fuel for cars in the form of ethanol.
As you can see, there is no smoke emitting from this in this room. Try this with a tablespoon or 2 of gasoline, and you will have the comparative test. Also, when your engine is through burning on gasoline, take it apart and see how much dirty carbon you find in the engine. We found that running a car 3,500 miles, we couldn't even get a white glove dirty when we took our finger inside of the exhaust pipe.
In 1941, the manufacturer Henry Ford designed an automobile that was built almost entirely with vegetable products, especially cannabis and its derivatives. The engine was already using a blend of 10% ethanol, while the body was made up of a special biodegradable plastic, much lighter but significantly stronger than a normal metallic body.